For Sunday, June 11th, you found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, it's a $23 million man running for Congress. In Fulton County, there is a tax furor. And guess what? Georgia meets reality. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you'll be with us on this Sunday. It is June the 11th. We are 9 days away from the congressional race to top all congressional races. That's not hyperbole, it's fact. Most expensive congressional race in history. This week we learned that Jon Ossoff, the Democrat, who never says he's a Democrat, but the Democrat, has raised another, what was it, $11 million, pushing him to $23 million by himself in this race against Karen Handel. Phil, there was a poll this week from the AJC that actually was startling, I think, to Republicans, showing that Jon Ossoff has a, what was it, a 7-point lead?
It was a 7-point lead. It was by the ABT group, which the AJC has used before. They always poll 2 weeks out. And so we got 2 weeks to go, as we all know, and the election's June 20th. I think Ossoff would be slightly ahead, maybe by 2 or 3 points, because we don't know a couple things with that poll. We don't know the questionnaire. We don't know what was asked. And we also, and this is tricky for any pollsters, I'm not criticizing the ABT people, but I would say
Well, I will, because they're often wrong.
Well, they're often wrong, but I will say this, it's very difficult when you're talking likely voters, and we've talked about this before, in a special election. We just don't know. We can do it better with general elections and primaries. But I would say this: the Republicans need to get their act together. And one last thing, I think Karen Handel is a very good candidate. I know we're going to talk about the debate and everything in a minute. I think they made a big mistake on Friday, though. They had the vice president comes in, who's very well liked by all Republicans. They were over at Dobbins. They just had a fundraiser. They didn't have a rally. I think Karen Handel's being disserved by her consultants. It's all turnout rally. Both sides should be rallying.
Well, let's go back to the polling for a minute. First of all, I think the poll's an outlier, or it's a trendsetter, because every poll I've seen shows there's a 2-point race either way within the margin of error. Now
but
here
don't
comes
they all show Ossoff ahead?
with Ossoff in a slight lead. But now comes a 7-point lead in the poll done for the AJC. That could be the result of the debates. There were 2 this week. That could be momentum. That could be related to the strange election in Britain. There are all kinds of things. Who's voting, what have you. I still think it's closer than 7 points.
Well,
and I
7
think
points
you
is
do
close
too.
when you've got a 3 or 4 point margin of error. You know, you're talking about a 3-4 point race, even when you factor in the margin of error. One of the interesting things about the AJC poll was the partisan crossover. You had 13% of Republicans who were supporting Ossoff and only 3% of Democrats who were supporting Handel. And that could actually be that margin,
That's
that
true.
3 to 4 point margin. If it holds, you might see Ossoff actually succeed in this incredible upset.
Well, let's take a look at the debates this week. First of all, you're right about the Handel campaign. It's an awful campaign. I've refrained from saying that. It is not a good campaign. I don't even get her schedule. I have no idea what she's doing. All I do is get fundraising appeals. Who runs that? Who's the PR guy for that campaign?
Well, I think
you got to stop.
Charlie Harper does PR.
Who's Charlie Harper?
Well, Rob
Where's
Sims.
he?
Rob Sims.
Where's Rob?
is
Why
the
hadn't Rob
campaign.
called? Who
I don't
are
know.
these people?
I don't know.
But if I want to know about Ossoff, I call Nancy Pelosi. That's easy. But what do I do? What do I do about Handel?
Like Karen Handel now.
Speed down.
Anyway, they debated this week, and Nancy
was
Pelosi
funny.
was a big part of it. Alexis, you and I are in rare agreement. In the main debate, the one on, let's phrase this carefully, on VHF TV as opposed to UHF TV.
Okay.
I thought Ossoff won the first half, and I thought Handel just came roaring back to win the second half.
I tend to agree with you on that assessment. And in the first few minutes of seeing the debate, I said, oh gosh, he should have taken that press club debate on being on CNN, because he would have been a big star
But he couldn't,
nationwide.
because he'd have to let his far left people know that he's running as a hawk on foreign policy.
Well, that's all right. I mean, they know he's in a runoff against a Republican in a red district, in a red state.
But it is tricky. It goes to those votes that Jeff are talking about, those few people that maybe some Republicans or maybe voters who don't follow this, who think he's actually a moderate when he's not. And
well,
so
there are moderate Republicans, as you know, Phil,
well,
and I think that a lot of them can go either way in a race like this and just choose who they think is the best candidate. A lot of them are women and are upset with Handel's with her history with on Planned Parenthood
and that was the big debate topic.
In the debate, though, it took her forever to point out the obvious. That Planned Parenthood doesn't do mammograms.
Except they do physical examinations of women, and that's how you can find some early detection. And then they refer them to the men.
But if you're going to have a breast screen,
the point is,
you've got to have a mammogram.
The point is, she was one person, and it was
the board
that did it.
You don't have to have a mammogram to detect cancer.
I would say this, though, going back to your point, Alexis, that I think the Democratic consultants told him, don't do the press club debate, don't do a national CNN debate. To our point, Jeff, because you don't want to tick off the moderates when you have a chance to. How is he going to say, he says he wants to work for with Republicans in his ads, and yet he goes to these resistance anti-Republican rallies, so you can't have it both ways with moderates.
Well, he's having it both ways in this campaign, and he's running it brilliantly.
It's a good stealth campaign. He's cloaked himself in this phony moderation.
He's independent, and he'll reach across the aisle, and he was looking for bipartisan solutions.
And he
used the word independent more times than John Adams and John Hancock and Thomas Jefferson. He used the word independent
and he could
over
also
and
name
over.
some Republicans with whom he would work with, and Karen Handel could not or would not. She dared not. Is that what it was?
Well, she should have just told him that he ought to just continue where he started, working with John Lewis and Hank Johnson.
Well, she did hang Hank Johnson around his neck 2 or 3 times.
Right, and I think that hurts.
Another thing that hurt Karen Handel was it was understandable when she said that she did not support a livable wage.
That wasn't understandable at all. She was a big
minimum wage, raising the minimum wage.
The question was raise the minimum wage. She's opposed to that. But the livable wage is a Marxist thing. That's a Bernie Sanders far left thing. That's an extension.
The minimum wage was never meant to be. The minimum wage was never meant to be.
$15 minimum wage.
It was never meant to be
that's
a
why,
livable wage.
Well, that's why he called it a livable wage. It's not the same as a minimum wage.
I think that you all are a little out of touch there. There's a new generation of folks who are looking at $2,000 a month rent and a job that pays $12 or $15 an hour, and they're very much attuned to the notion of a livable wage.
Everybody is for a livable wage, but I don't think the minimum
it's like a guaranteed income.
The minimum wage is not the vehicle, is the point that Karen Handel made. More and better jobs.
Yeah, but I think that when you're out there in a debate saying that you oppose a livable wage, it just doesn't. It doesn't go over well.
Her messaging would have been better. We're both PR people. I agree with your messaging. However, Jeff, you ask the teenagers that are being fired from all of these jobs all around the country about raising the minimum wage, and then the employer says, I can't afford to keep you on anymore, kids, sorry.
Well,
that's the danger of raising a minimum wage.
See, I was a small business owner at one time, and I was in agreement with the city of Atlanta when the city council said, let's make it $10 as a minimum wage, and this was like 20 years ago. So I did that, but in order to do it, I had to make people work part-time. But if everybody worked 2 jobs at $10 an hour, you could almost have a livable, 20 years ago.
Livable wage is a movement. Minimum wage is an issue. I mean, that's the difference here. Now, one thing Karen Handel has done, she's got a very effective commercial now running a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, calling out John Ossoff for sending a crew to the front lines as opposed to this young man who went to the front lines. He tells his story well.
I think national security, interestingly, is a big issue, and I think Karen Handel is strong on that. He's weak, because even the Washington Post, the liberal Post, called him a liar on his national security credentials. It's interesting. Usually we talk about local issues, and yes, they are, but it's really a national election, as we're all agreeing
There's no question that it's a national election.
And
one of the interesting things about it is you've got a candidate in the race, John Ossoff, who's raised more money than Republican presidential candidates the last go-round.
Right.
Charlie Fiorina, John Kasich, and others did not
amazing?
raise $23 million.
That's an amazing detail, isn't it?
You know,
a 6-district race.
He raised
in
more
Georgia.
than David Perdue in his race for the U.S. Senate.
You know,
statewide.
it's a tribute to the left-wing money machine, and I have to say, on the other side, on the right, it's
They
the
came
right is
roaring
stepping
back,
up.
yeah.
The right,
right.
so it's both base donors are really stepping up.
It's amazing. Yeah, because it'll be, what, by the end of the campaign, $40 million
Yes.
will have been put
Right.
into. So this is making the year for all the TV stations, correct?
Oh my gosh. This was found money for television stations
about
and radio
that?
stations, no question about that. All right, enough of the 6th district for a moment. When we come back, these issues are real. These aren't phony. If you live in Fulton County, the largest county in the state, you are probably angry right now. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
We've seen this before all through Metro Atlanta. I can remember a tax revolt in DeKalb County 30 years ago. Fulton County's tax revolt of some years ago led to the rise of Republican change at the Fulton County Commission. This one, though, seems to be not a matter of politicians raising taxes, but of assessors catching up with the recession, where property values tanked for 8 years under President Obama. And now they're coming back.
Oh, precipitated by President Bush, right?
That's technically correct. They tanked under President Obama. That's technically correct.
Well,
and they're coming back.
Because of a recession created by the previous Republican
Well,
administration.
those talking
right?
points are so old. But let's go back
They
to
are
the
old.
assessment.
They
They're
are
old.
old
Doesn't
because
make
now
any-
you got 4.3%
Yeah, well, here we go
unemployment.
again.
And that is
Doesn't
because
doesn't
of
make
President
any
Obama.
less
Here we
Wait,
go
wait,
again.
wait.
even if it's old talking points.
Jeff and
it's
I,
true talking
Jeff and
points.
I don't have to apologize for DeKalb. The assessments in DeKalb went up 8%. That seems about right to me.
And they have been
But
going
in Fulton
up in
County,
recent
the
years.
average is 13%, but that's not the real number.
Yes.
We have 90 neighborhoods where the increases are more than 30%. I don't know if you want to even mention yours.
Well,
I didn't ask you that.
I'm a Fulton County, and I got hammered like everybody else. And you're making a great
It's
point.
catch-up.
There was a 3-year freeze in Fulton County. So Fulton County, the commission, the Board of Appraisers had 3 years to try to fix this. They should have known, like everybody else, what would happen. And the county commission does appoint the members of the appraisers. And so I think one thing, they need to rescind all of these assessments, number one. Number
But
two,
the board refused on Thursday to do
the
that.
board
They're gonna
refused,
look at it next
and
week,
I think
though.
you're gonna see more pressure to come back for to rescind.
It's interesting.
But secondly, the legislature might have to step in here and do some legislation. I think there's going to have to be some phase-in, is the bottom line.
And that's what it should have been instead of having
Exactly.
this freeze.
But it's-
And was it the legislature that made the county not be able to raise taxes?
Well, the taxes is one thing. The freeze froze assessments, but they could have worked out another plan on the assessments to, like you're saying,
you know,
phase in.
You
It's-
can't ask people to take a whack like that.
Well, you
And
can't.
you got the politicians, Jeff, pardon me for interrupting, the politicians are saying this is outrageous, we got to stop this. The Atlanta City Council
Passed a
unanimously
resolution.
passed a resolution.
Exactly
And-
right.
The Fulton County Commission, you've got John Eves leading the charge. Caesar Mitchell, the president of the Atlanta City Council, gets the line of the week. He called the tax digest indigestible.
Right. That's
Pretty good.
right. That was
Right.
good. It is. And I live in Fulton County, and mine more than doubled. My
Well, that's not
assessment.
right, though.
No.
'Cause I don't think the value
But
of your
except
home
that
has
my-
more than doubled, has it?
Well, hopefully, because it had really gone to
Oh.
under
Well,
the table.
here's the bottom line for anyone in Fulton County, and of course other counties too. If you feel like you're being ripped off, appeal.
Yes.
Appeal.
You can do that.
Well, but you know, they can't, in Fulton County, the problem is so massive, I don't think they can process all the appeals.
Well, they have to by law.
Well, I know, but I mean, I just
Just
think
the numbers.
It took
I
a
think
year.
You're right.
I
They're
have
gonna have to
won
rescind it.
my appeals for years with Fulton County. I will say that sometimes it takes over a year, but generally you will win your appeal.
That's because you're the former president of the Southeastern Legal Foundation,
No.
and you know lots of lawyers.
It's
is that why?
because we get on the computer and see what your home sales are in the area. That's the first thing you do.
Well, and thank you for saying that, because my sense of this Fulton County thing is that they didn't even look at comps.
Right.
They just raised them.
Right.
And
I think that they were just playing catch up, and this is the
Yes.
price that you pay for
Yeah.
having a freeze for 3
They
years.
were, and it was sloppy catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right, in
Not
DeKalb
well
County,
done.
just jumping around here a little bit, Michael Thurmond, sane hand at the wheel, the tiller in DeKalb County, and he backed away from a plan to give huge pay raises to police. And and he seems to be getting away with it. The commission agrees with him. Let's put
Well,
in a sane system.
when you look
of
at the
pay scales.
rationale that he offered for doing so, and the fact that you've got a whole bunch of people whose salaries are compressed and bunched together, and he wants to just make more sense of the whole the way that people are paid and compensated in
Doesn't
DeKalb
he want to
County.
phase it in?
And he's going to phase it in. They did a salary review, and he applauded that effort a year or so ago, and he wants to implement some of those findings. It makes a lot of sense. Not only that, but the police have gotten an offer, and he just listed a laundry list of benefits that police and fire have gotten in recent years.
Well, and because he is Michael Thurmond and has a different approach, the police union, there's folks went along with him on this. There was no real resistance to it. I thought that was interesting. In Gwinnett County, finally, the ethics board there decided to reprimand or censure Commissioner Tommy Hunter for exercising his First Amendment rights on a complaint brought by somebody who doesn't live in Gwinnett County, but that's another issue.
The issue is the First Amendment, and you can say repugnant and horrible and hateful speech that we don't like, but for an ethics board, I don't care who you are, just, like we all have said, I think, let the voters decide on this certain individual, this county commissioner.
But
if you
also,
want to keep
I would
him.
say also let an ethics board do its job and enforce some ethics rules, some rules of civility for elected officials. And I think that that's what they were doing, and they have every right to do that.
For speech?
Oh, yes, absolutely,
Oh,
for speech.
man,
When you're an elected official and you get up there and you're saying wonderful things about the Ku Klux Klan or whatever,
It's a slippery slope.
it is an appropriate thing for an ethics board to come in and say, we think that that's not,
Well,
that's
who the heck
not
are they to? All four of us would be
useful or
reprimanded by these
beneficial
boards.
speech.
We're
You know
not
what?
elected officials. Come
know
on.
what?
We can-
Well,
About 47% of our viewers would be reprimanding me right
Well,
now.
We're
I mean,
public
come on.
figures. I think the board, it is a slippery slope. The board, someone's one speech, and another speech, and you're trying to judge it. Come on.
Well, some speech needs to be judged, particularly.
Do it
That's
in the,
what
do
voters
it in
are
the
for.
court of public opinion. The key to bad speech is more speech
But you know
to
what?
counter it.
It's moot here because, as we said last week, this ethics board is going to end up in court anyway.
Right.
Challenging the whole
Right.
Well,
notion of
and it may be moot. I believe he said that he isn't going to run again.
He
And
Yeah,
did say
it
that,
is
but I'm
moot.
not sure how
he's not gonna
publicly
run
he said
again.
it.
Right.
And of course, John Lewis has said that it's up to the people to
decide.
Okay.
decide.
Yeah.
When we come back, I can't think of a better cliche than, let's try this, Georgia meets reality. Stay with us.
Lord.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
You're a young married couple, you're expecting your first child, you're thinking, gosh, it's going to be a girl, what should we call her? You know what? The rent's coming up, the grocery bills are high, adding this voice to our family is going to be expensive. Let's call her Reality. And then, since our last name is Winner, we have Reality Winner.
Only in the age of Trump could you have a name like that come to the
Well,
surface.
exactly. And I can't, it's startling to read it. Reality Winner meets Reality. What was it?
Well, she is
even the late night comedians.
Let's tell
were.
the viewers what we're talking about here. She's.
Oh, why not?
Yeah, I know. She is the traitor over in Augusta, Georgia.
She is the
Alleged traitor.
alleged. She has not been
I'm going to
convicted.
exercise my First Amendment right to
There
my
you go.
opinion here. Who leaked very sensitive classified documents to an online
Not
media
knowing that
source.
every printer in the building had a signature.
Well, she's also stupid, but anyhow. But this is a tragedy. This is, in my opinion, this is the fruit of this evil philosophy that's now being taught in our schools and universities that America
saying
is a
that,
terrible
Phil.
place. It's an evil place. Let's talk about reality here a minute. She loves Osama bin Laden and the Taliban. She wanted to move
This
to
is not
Afghanistan.
being taught in schools.
Oh, we could have a whole broadcast on what garbage
You've been
is
talking
being
about
taught.
First Amendment rights, and you're going to knock somebody who loves Osama bin Laden and likes the
You know what?
Taliban?
I
Don't they have a
think
choice?
our security's at stake. I hope nobody who loves Osama bin Laden plants a bomb where you're at a public place.
I just hope they're not working for the NSA, but they certainly have a right to
well,
whatever politics
she's
they
a
want to
dangerous
ascribe to.
she can-
dangerous person.
Well, she has a national security clearance. If she were just a millennial, at Town Brookhaven, she could do what she wants.
Right.
Well, that's the
Agreed.
frightening
But
part,
she
how
has
she got
a-
it.
she has a
They didn't
top
monitor
secret
her
clearance.
social media, which is shocking, and that's what President Trump
Thank you.
wants to do with what he calls extreme vetting. They're finally looking at social media, but they missed this woman.
He should
Yeah,
start
I
with
think because
himself.
she had her
Right.
clearance from the Air Force, and it was never done again. She works for a defense contractor,
Right,
by
she
the
was
way.
in the Air Force.
Well,
And she's only
in a world
25
of
years
hurt.
old.
Speaking of President Trump, this
A
week
lot of
he
trouble.
oddly nominated, really wasn't a big deal at all. He picked an Atlanta fella, Christopher Wray, to head the FBI. I remember him as a prosecutor here. I remember him in the Bush Justice Department, head of the criminal division.
Right.
He was at King and Spalding.
Partner at King and Spalding, a
Highly
great
regarded.
pick, highly
He's
It'll
regarded.
done a lot of work.
interesting to
I
see
think he
how
did
long
some
he
work for Chris
lasts.
Christie over there during that whole
Bridgegate.
That's Bridgegate in
his
New Jersey.
Bridgegate kind
But his appointment to succeed James Comey was, of course, overshadowed by James Comey.
Right.
And it was odd timing that the president would announce that the day before
That's what I'm kinda
Comey's
getting at, yeah.
He was
testimony.
trying to knock off the attention.
I know,
Actually-
and what he did was just
Draw more
No, I
attention
actually
to
think
it.
it was good timing because the contrast between Comey, this weakling, both Democrats and Republicans wanted him fired. I think if Hillary Clinton were president, she would have rightly fired him. The guy is a terrible manager, a law enforcer. I mean, it's incredible. I thought the contrast between Chris Wray, highly regarded, as we all say, and Comey, who just totally screwed up his testimony. And by the way, the president was vindicated on this phony collusion business with the
I
Russians.
don't
how was he
think- how was
vindicated?
the-
I think
I
I don't know what
Comey said there was no
your
collusion.
first name should not be reality
Comey-
because you're not living in
Did
it.
you watch-
You gotta
did you
look.
watch?
You gotta.
Yes, I
you gotta-
watched too, and I don't
well,
see how you came to
let me
that
tell you
conclusion.
what.
That's
This
what
was
Comey
the
said.
strongest testimony by a top law enforcement officer in the nation against the president in what 50 years, 100 years. When you get on television in front of the nation and say that the president is lying, plain and
Oh,
simple.
that's just his vindictive opinion.
Oh, it's not an opinion at all. It was an absolute fact
And
that
you
he
know
was
that- you know
lying,
the president
and you're
is
here
lying
trying to
too.
support
Come
him
on.
and defend him.
No,
They
You
can't
know the
find any
president
collusion. And
lies.
James Comey was such a man of principle, such a man of principle, after he had shown that he had no spine throughout the Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, all that kind of thing. Now he goes on national television and says, you know what, I was so scared that I leaked it to the New York Times. Really?
He was so mad.
You know, I
he
don't
leaked it to the
understand
New
where
York
this word
Times.
leak comes from. When you write a memo documenting a meeting that you've had with an official in the U.S. government, and you share that memo that you authored with someone else, that's not a leak. A leak is sensitive, confidential
It's a government document.
information.
It's a government
Well,
document
that-
handed to
that's-
somebody outside the government.
But
And
the point
beyond
is, he
that,
gave
though-
it to a friend and
Yes.
instructed the friend
to share it
to
with
read
the-
it
share
to the New York Times, which
yeah.
he did. Exactly
You know,
right.
Dick, it's
and
funny.
he's
They
been
were
very
blasting
transparent
Comey.
about it.
They were back in July a year ago. They were blasting Comey. This is hilarious to hear you two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and at a time
So
you were
Comey-
blasting
Comey
Comey.
too.
If
Right,
Comey felt
exactly.
that
You
the
were
way-
supporting him, rather.
They were
Right?
blast-
At the same time, you were
blasting
supporting
him
him.
for not-
And now you think he's a
not
bad guy.
charging
Actually, if you
her.
go back and look at the tape, I didn't like what he was
Maybe
doing
the
back
fact
then.
that both Democrats and Republicans have disliked him at some point
Folks,
shows his
it's
own
like Sally
independence
Yates.
and his own
It
integrity.
shows his own
Comey
incompetence.
reminded me a little bit of the situation Sally Yates found herself in. If he was this upset with the President of the United States, he should have simply resigned and made his case. But he didn't. He leaked. What kind of courage is that?
Well, and then
He
the other
didn't- he
bombshell
The
didn't-
was
president's lying? Go ahead and quit.
he
No, no.
caved into
He-
Loretta Lynch on that whole Hillary
Shouldn't that
business.
matter?
That
Yes,
matter,
it
right.
was
He
a
didn't-
criminal investigation of Hillary Clinton, and he caved in to the talking points of the Hillary campaign.
Look, the fact of the matter is,
No.
this guy's in 6 months in. He's already in this kind of deep water, and you all think he can last for 4 years?
Oh.
And
I
beyond that-
seriously doubt that
And
a
look at-
megalomaniac
Keep
with
wishing.
absolutely no respect
gotta
for the
get out.
rule
And
of
look at
law
all of the
will be able to
Republicans
make
around
it.
Trump who
Keep
will
I don't
not
think
say
he'll
he's
survive.
wrong when he's wrong.
Keep wishing.
And so
Yeah,
you're
just keep the
faulting
liar in
Comey
chief
for
in
not.
place. That's what you
and
wanna
plus,
do,
Comey
right?
was
Anyway.
trying to get to the bottom of the situation. That's what he
I have
stayed
some
in.
sympathy for Christopher Wray stepping into all that.
I do too.
Yeah, the question is, has
How
he
long
been?
is he gonna last?
Has
Did he pledge a
did he
loyalty
promise his
oath?
loyalty?
And if he's going to leak, I hope he leaks to us, not the New York Times. All right. When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we're being told to speak quickly, so I will do that. Jeffrey, go.
Oh, William Taggart. I mean, I think that it just shocked us all. He was the interim president of Morehouse College. He was president at Atlanta Life, where you were a board member. He done some work for the Obama administration. I've heard that he was at a Braves game with his dear friend Wanya Lucas, and felt a pop in his head and had a brain aneurysm, and at 55 he's dead. And it's just a shock to everybody in Atlanta, and our hearts go out to his loved ones. He has a young daughter. Just a tragic situation.
Yeah.
You bet. How about you, Alexis?
Okay, I want to second that. And I want to salute First Congregational Church, a downtown Atlanta church that celebrates its 150th anniversary, was recognized by Atlanta City Council this week. So congratulations to the people who are members of the church that I attend.
Yes, I thought that was your church.
That was my church.
Yes.
And Andy Young's church and a bunch of other great people. M. Tamanika Youngblood, salute her for Sweet Auburn Works, had their second annual fundraiser to preserve the culture legacy of the Auburn Avenue district. And I'll stop.
Philip?
You know, I've got a winner. Last weekend in Augusta, Georgia, they had the state GOP convention, and John Watson, who was the former chief of staff to Governor Sonny Perdue, was elected the chairman by the delegates. And he's going to, I think, really pump up the fundraising for the party. And of course, John Ossoff, I think that he made a mistake, a big mistake, not going with the Atlanta Press Club and going national on CNN. He's afraid because of his phony message, it'll all come apart.
Message. She's just running a shrewd campaign.
I'll just make him my winner for being an independent, willing to reach across the aisle, to be a truly bipartisan figure. And if you believe me, I've got a date with a reality winner in your future. We'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.